Hi everyone, my name is Bianca Furtuna and I'm a technical evangelist in Microsoft UK. I don't work for Bing. I am in the developer experience group in Microsoft. So what we do is we try to promote a lot of the cool stuff we do at Microsoft to the developer audience within the UK. So hopefully my talk today is going to give you a taste of what's available and how you can get started straight away. So my talk has the difficult title of Intelligence as a Platform. And this is very difficult because intelligence as a word is very, very hard. And there's a lot of ways you can embed intelligence in your solutions or in your apps, and we're going to explore a lot of those today. So I wanted to start by talking about the world we live in today. So a lot of the work I do is around data, around machine learning and analytics, and around helping developers understand data that their apps, the web, is generating and create really good predictive models or solutions that can help predict the future. So the world we live in today is very complex. We have more data than ever before. And we have more devices that is generating data than ever before. And we also have the web. And the web is this huge network that's giving us data and context that we can take advantage of. The problem is it's very difficult, and not a lot of people know how to take advantage of the data that's just there at our fingertips. So without saying, I wanted to explain what I understand by intelligence. And I did this presentation before, and I was looking at explaining the audience what I understand by intelligence. And I found this definition in the online Oxford Dictionary that summarizes really, really well what intelligence is. So intelligence is the ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. And why this is important? Because we have two verbs here that's about learning and doing. So it's about a system that can very well learn what users want to do, what users want to see from an app, and also use that learning to take actions that make users happy, more effective, and it's empowering everyone to do their job better. And all about this, in a way, it's about understanding the context and the environment that your app operates in. And also, how do you interact with that environment? What I mean by environment is your user base, or the market where you put your app, or the market segment. And when I talk about this giving intelligence or bringing intelligence to an app, it's more about intelligent actions. So in predictive analytics, there are multiple steps you can take to make a system intelligent. And we're getting closer and closer to the ultimate goal, which is answering these 4 questions. So as a technology industry, we're really, really good, and we've been doing this for decades, to answer the first 2 questions, which is what happened and why did it happen? So if something happens in your app, there's a bug, there's an error, we're really good in taking that data, looking through it, figure out what went wrong and why it went wrong, and prevent it from ever happening again. Now with predictive analytics, we started talking about what will happen in the future. How can we figure out what is going to happen next week or next year, and what should I do when that specific thing is going to happen? And you can map this to different types of analytics that we're talking in today. So the first 2 questions really map to descriptive analytics, and this is a lot of the business intelligence application we see. So when you do a lot of stuff in Excel, you mostly look at these first 2 questions. And then predictive analytics is about predicting the future and building really good machine learning model that can understand the past and give you a little bit of overview of the future. And prescriptive analytics is the embedding this intelligent action of knowing what's going to happen in the future, knowing the context of the past, and being able to advise people, users, of the best action to take given that specific context. So how would you be able to do that? This sounds very, very easy, but when you try to put this in practice, it becomes very, very complicated because every single user you have is pretty much unique. So you want to understand that user as best as possible. So that's why I talk a lot about the Cortana Intelligence Suite. And Cortana Intelligence Suite is a bunch of services that should allow you to go from a lot of data that can come from anywhere, sensor devices, apps, to actions. And this actions is about intelligent system and people, basically making your users happier. So what I wanted to briefly talk about is what services are here. And when I show this diagram to people, everybody sort of freaks out. It's like, oh my God, there's just too many there. How do I even get started to understand what all of this stuff is doing? So very quickly, I'm going to touch upon different services and what they do. And then I'm going to deep dive into my favorite subject, which is machine learning, and then cover a little bit more in depth the BOF framework and what is actually the BOF framework and how you can actually start doing something useful with it. So there are 4 different types of services when you talk about an intelligent application, and that goes from information management or the data gathering piece or bringing data into your system. There are a bunch of services we have on Azure that allow you to deal with big volumes of data, but also data at high speed, so something like real-time application, so data coming through in real time and you being able to analyze it as you move forward. Big data stores, big data, it's about huge volume, petabytes of data they're able to put in the cloud and analyze very, very quickly and very effectively. The machine learning and analytic piece. And again, this is where most people get excited because this is the intelligent piece. This is where you start making sense of your data and you start doing something useful with it. So there's a lot of services in Azure that are able to do that for you. There's something that we call Azure Machine Learning, and this is about being able to build predictive models from your data, and you're able then to publish this as an API that you can use anywhere, and that's the beauties of APIs. You have data lake analytics and Hadoop and Spark, which are big data technologies in the cloud, and then you have something that we call stream analytics that's able to analyze data as coming through. And if you have never looked at a lot of these services, I do recommend you go and look at them because they do solve a lot of problems that developers have been trying to solve every single time they start building a new application. And this sort of generalizes it and brings the managed services that takes that management piece away, so you're able to focus on what really matters, which is the analytics. And then the last bit of this story is what we call the intelligent piece. But I like to refer to it as the exposed piece because you can have the best data pipeline and the best machine learning algorithms, the best predictions, but if nobody sees it, they're pretty much useless. If you don't expose it and your users are not using it effectively, you pretty much wasted your time. And that's where a lot of these services come into play. So things like the BOF framework, and that's the beauty of the BOF framework, is exposing this intelligence to your users. Cortana is a great mechanism to expose this analytics to the world, and Power BI. That's a really, really quick way to bring all of this visualization, and a very painlessly plugs into stuff like stream analytics or a lot of the data stores. So you don't have to worry about the pipelining. It's already done for you. And that's very, very cool. So let's think about certain scenarios. And I'm not talking about the future here. I'm talking about what's possible now. So if you have the right data and the right people, you can basically tackle a lot of the scenarios today. And I work with a couple of organizations that are doing this. So let's look at a couple of this example on this board. And there are a lot of them that I really like, because you probably use this from a bunch of companies and you don't even know they're there. But they're very effective at promoting the right behavior in their customers. So one of the ones I really like, it's around personalized offers and product recommendations. And Amazon Marketplace is really good at doing so. So they're really, really good at knowing what other people bought and recommending them to you when you're looking at buying a purchase, but furthermore is their search. So when you go and you type a product into Amazon, you see that their search basically gives you a bunch of results under the recommended category, right? So it's recommended. And I tried this experiment a while ago. I type something, and then one of my friends types something, and we get completely different results. And the reason is because Amazon knows what type of buyer you are. They know if you like to buy a big purchase that's super expensive, or if you like to buy little ones. And that's very, very important, because the way they rank different products is completely different. And what they do is stimulate you to buy more effectively. So it's a very, very small way, but how many people realize that's actually happening? And that's the beauty of machine learning and predictive analytics, is that it becomes invisible. It's embedded in your platform. Users don't even know they're using it. And that's where you know that machine learning is actually working. Machine learning is not supposed to be, oh my God, this website or this app is using machine learning. When it's working seamlessly, and it's stimulating the right user behavior, that's when you know it's actually working as it's meant to. And then there's a lot of stuff that happen, and fraud detection is another one that happens to me every year. You know, you get that awkward call from your bank, are you in Malaysia right now? I'm like, no, I'm in London. They're like, are you sure somebody's trying to take out £500 from your bank account? Like, no, it's probably a fraud. They're like, okay. So, again, a lot of banks and credit cards have been doing this fraud detection for a while, and it's all using machine learning algorithms in the background. And I think my message from you today is that it's not very hard to get started. It's quite hard sometimes to get it right, but getting started and exploring a lot of this option is definitely quite easy. So my next step is around machine learning. Who of you would say they've done machine learning before? A couple of people. Who here is like brand new to machine learning? Yeah, most people. So let's look at machine learning, because machine learning is that sort of technology that a lot of people think they know what it is, and it's not really quite that. So machine learning is about computer systems that become smarter with experience, and experience is about past data and human inputs. And the human input bit is very, very important. So at the moment, there's not a system that can automatically create a machine learning model for you. There's a lot of human work that goes into creating the best machine learning model, and that's why Terminator is not happening right now. So I talk with a lot of customers, and even though I have a lot of experience with machine learning, they expect me to just go in and build this machine learning model and, they're done. And I don't know their business as much as they do, right? So it's about understanding the markets, understanding what the machine learning model is saying something that's right or wrong for your specific user base. And that's where the difficulty in machine learning comes along. It's not about the math or the algorithm. It's about understanding what the machine learning algorithm is actually saying. And if it's saying something wrong, you need to go back and basically correct your data. And it's a really interesting cycle that we're going to go into. So machine learning has been around since the 1940s, and in a way or another, everybody's implementing very small machine learning algorithm, but now we're talking about huge scale. So why do we start talking about machine learning so much in the last 2 to 3 years? It's because of the technology revolution that we have. We have the cloud, that's basically a supercomputer at your fingertips. I remember when I used to work in academia before, and we had to deploy this huge algorithm to a supercomputer. You had to go to university supercomputer, reserve a 10-hour slot, deploy your algorithm to it, just go back, do something else, and then you will go there and say, oh, there was an error with your program. Come back next week when you have another 10-hour slot. So it was much, much, much slower. But now you just go to Azure, you stand up a VM. It can be huge, it can be tiny, whatever you have the budget for, basically. And then your algorithm just run, and you don't have to wait anymore. You can go through this iteration as many times as you want. I mean, you have a lot of time during the night when these algorithms can run, and you wake up in the morning with beautiful results, which is not possible like 4 years ago. And it's also about agility. We're much better now at doing this very agile software development cycle. So we're able to iterate very fast and figure out why we're doing this wrong, and then go back and take another direction. And we also have a lot of data. So hopefully a lot of you have heard of deep learning before. Deep learning is this new algorithm that's state-of-the-art that we're doing a lot of this cool image recognition with. And deep learning have existed since the 40s. But people forgot about them because we never had enough data to make them useful. But nowadays we have. So everything from speech recognition to machine translation to object recognition is getting so much better today because of this data explosion. So data, it's a beautiful, amazing thing that people need to start taking advantage of, because otherwise it's going to get lost. And because we have all this free thing, we can now more effectively build machine learning models. So this is why I talk about iteration. So machine learning is all about iteration. And when you do machine learning, you need to understand this. We're talking about tens of iterations or hundreds of iterations. It's not a one-off stuff you do, you put it on the shelf, and then you move on with your life. It's something that happens constantly. And you need to improve your machine learning constantly because your user base changes, right? The way your user interacts with your apps changes. The way the market is moving changes. So if you want your machine learning model to know about these changes, you need to continuously work on it. And that's why we talk about the machine learning process. So you have an idea, and this is the ting moment. We can predict this in the future, and this is going to save us this much money. So let's go and get the data and start building this model. So what you do is you combine the data with business knowledge, and you start preparing your data. You put your data in the right format. And then you go into the modeling piece. And the modeling piece is where the magic happens. You basically put a bunch of algorithms on top of your data, and then you build those to predict something. Something like, what is this user going to want to buy if they bought this specific item? And that's the sort of thing you're able to predict. Once you've done the modeling, you go into the evaluation stage. So you're trying to figure out how well your model is going to do if you release it into the wild when your customers are starting to use it. And then you go through this loop a lot of times. Because sometimes you think, oh, my data is perfect. And you go here and it's like, it's doing worse at the random prediction. Okay, I should go back. And you go through this loop so many times. And this is very useful because once you go in this loop multiple times, you start understanding your data better. You're like, oh, I never realized this is happening in our system. I never thought people are using it this way. Oh, let me go and check. So you're building a model, but you also understand your user base. You understand how they're using your app. You understand your system and your market. So this exercise will be useful just generally, not just for machine learning purposes. So once you're happy with your machine learning model, you can go there and publish it as an API. And then this API, if you use different services and different toolings, there's different way to do it, but is able to retrain it on unseen data. So you'll be able to programmatically retrain your model to keep it fresh. And there's a tool that we offer in Azure that you can use for free in the beginning. That's very, very simple to get started with this. And I think I might have time for a demo. just to show you how easy it is. And usually when I give this demo, a lot of people are like, oh, this is going to be a little bit boring and algorithms are hard, so we're not going to get much out of it. After this demo, a lot of people are like, oh, I can try this and I can try this and I have this data set. So everything becomes very, very cool. So what you can do with Azure Machine Learning is you can get data out of different types of sources. So they can be cloud-borne data, they can be stored in an Excel file on your local machine, and you basically bring this into this browser-based environment. And it's a very easy interface, sort of drag and drop, but if you want to do some cool programming, you can basically put some Python or R code in, and then you play around with the data science process I've just shown before, and then you publish this into an API. And it's very easy in Azure Machine Learning Studio to publish this API wrapper because it does it automatically for you, so you don't have to manage it at all. You're just done with your model, you click publish, the API is made, and then you have an API key that you put in your application and you're good to go. So it's very, very easy, and you're supposed to help experimenting with machine learning because this is the hardest bit. So let's have a look at the Azure Machine Learning Studio. And this is the bit where things might get a little bit tricky. So do stop me at any time if you have any questions. So this is the Azure Machine Learning Studio. Again, I have this free workspace. So if you have a Microsoft account, you can use this for free and start experimenting. So everything I do today, you can do after this presentation or during this presentation. It's up to you. So this is the workspace area here. And on your left-hand side, you have a bunch of modules that you can start drag and dropping into the interface. So what I'm going to do today is that I'm going to build a predictive model that's going to predict the income of an individual based on specific characteristics. So I want to know if this person has income below or above 50K. And you might say, why would that ever be useful? And that would be very, very useful is if you want to sell that person something. So you have a bunch of individuals, you want to sell something that's slightly expensive, you might want to target your advertising campaign to the people with an income above 50K because they can afford it. While maybe the other people below 50K, some of them will get it, but it's not going to be in the same amount of numbers. So I have this data set here. So if I right-click on it, I can start looking at the type of data that I have. So I see I have 15 columns and 32,000 rows. And to give you an idea, this is a slightly small data set. You want many more rows if you want to do this for real. And I have different characteristics of this individual. I have their age, their working class, their education, if they're married or not, what they do, relationship, sex, age. And then I have this column in the end that's called income. So here I can see how my what sort of data I have. And I see I have like roughly, let's say 25 people with income above 50K and then 75 people that have income below 50K. And this is pretty useful because very, very quickly you can click on this column and see very different characteristics about your data set. You can see like how the age is distributed, for example. And this is very, very useful because you can see how you collected the data as well. And if this data is very, very good. So now I'm going to start doing the tricky bits, and do let me know if this gets confusing. I'm more than happy to answer your questions, and all of us can go here knowing how to start implementing machine learning models. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my data set and split it into two. And I'm going to put 70% of the data in something that we call the training set, and then 30% of the data in something we call the test set. And the reason we do this is because we want to have a high percentage of the data we have available to train our machine learning model, and then we want to have another subset that the model has never seen before to see if our model is any good. So that's actually trying to reproduce, in a way, a real-life scenario when you actually build a model and then you deploy it to the wild with new data that's coming through and want to see how it's doing. So that's what we're doing here. Then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drag this model called train model in. And no, actually I want to show that like that. And then I want to drag in a machine learning model. So there are different types of machine learning models, and I'm not going to go into them now. But if you look here, there are 4 types that we offer out of the box. And what we're doing today is this sort of model that's called classification. So we're trying to predict 2 different classes of individuals, the ones that have the income below 50K and the ones that have the income above 50K. So we're going to use a model that we call the 2-class classification. It's basically trying to identify those 2 classes. It's very, very easy conceptually. So don't worry about this now. If you're very interested, you can go in and see why they're useful. It's very, very easy in Azure because you have this small little help button there that's able to describe what each algorithm does without going to the maths. And that's very cool. So what you do is you just drag, you connect that there and the data here. And then you have to tell the algorithm what you're trying to predict. So if you just go in, select the column, so that's the income column we've seen before. So we're just trying to predict that specific class. And then, just very, very easy, we're going to score the model. So we're going to see how this model is doing on the 30% of the data that we put aside, and we're going to evaluate it. And what the evaluate module does is basically creating a nice graph for us. To visualize. And this is quite fast, right? It's already done. It created a predictive model. It's called that model, and it took like how many seconds? Oh, it doesn't say. Like, let's say 5 seconds. So it's pretty fast. It's because it's all running in the cloud. If you would do this on your local machine, it would last like maybe 10, 20 minutes. But because it's running Azure, it's pretty fast. So if we right-click on the evaluate model, let's see how it's doing. Cool. So this is where you start understanding how your model did. And we're going to look at this measure here, which is called accuracy. And accuracy is the percentage of the correct prediction you have compared to all the predictions you made. And we see that this model is 86% accurate, which is decent, right? It's our first go. We haven't done any extra work with the data, and we get 86% accuracy, which is pretty decent. And let's say I'm happy with this model, and now what I want to do is basically deploy it as a web service. And this is the only magic that's going to happen in the entire tool. Is basically creating the inputs and outputs of the API straight away. And you can play around with this. But in the interest of time, we're just going to deploy it as a web service and see how fast it is, right? Cool. This is running. Now I say deploy to web service, and what this does in the background is taking all the codes for the model and is wrapping it as a web API. And then you have this web API that you can use straight away within any application. And it took me less than 5 minutes. So again, this is just a normal web API that you can use. Go off and deploy this model within your application. It's very, very easy. And it's supposed to allow you to do this experimentation very quickly. So what you can do now is you have this machine learning model. You want to try it out. You can plug in within your solution or your app, see how it's doing. If you like it, you can take it out or you can leave it in. It's non-disruptive, so you can start experimenting with this cool new predictive analytics very, very quickly. So, any questions on machine learning so far? No? Awesome. Let's talk about bots. Recently we announced the Microsoft Bot Framework. And a lot of people get very, very excited about bots because they're starting to be the new way of interacting with customers. And the reason why is because you usually deploy or publish these bots on different type of channels. So you can deploy them on Facebook Messenger, you can deploy them on Skype, Slack, Telegram, so on and so forth. And if you sort of deploy them or publish them to these channels, you don't have to worry about users. Right? Users are already there. I mean, Skype has 300 million users. Facebook Messenger has 1 billion active users every month. So it's much easier to get access to these users if you know where to put your bot. So that's why people really love it. It's like, we're building this new bot, we're going to have access to all these new customers, and they're going to start using our products. Because app stores are now saturated, and this is the new way to interact with customers. So what we offer via the Microsoft Bot Framework is a bunch of services that make it easier for developers to build bots. So we have this thing called the Bot Builder, and the Bot Builder is an SDK that's available in both C# and Node.js that allows you to very, very quickly build a bot. One note here, this bot does not have intelligence embedded, right? You can't do extraordinary cool stuff out of the box. It's not going to understand what you're saying. It's basically a dumb bot. It's up to developers to build these dialogues, which are the basic way of interacting with the bots, because it's supposed to be in a conversational format. And then you use something like cognitive services, stuff like the Bing APIs or the machine learning models that you build yourself, to make this bot intelligent and make it very smart when it's interacting with customers. And a lot of people are starting to do this very, very effectively. Then what we also offer is this development portal. You can basically connect, register your bots, and try to publish them via different channels, and then your users are able to go in and start trying them out. And then cognitive services, they're machine learning and APIs that some of them are from Bing, some of them are come down from Microsoft Research, and these are pre-built machine learning models. So remember what we did before, where we build machine learning models. Basically, these are general models that have already been trained on millions of data points that are able to do really well tasks like object recognition, speech to text, text to speech, are able to out of the box analyze something like text and give you the sentiment. So all of that is already embedded, so you can start using that out of the box. So let's look a little bit of how does this bot work. Because from a developer perspective, you sort of understand what a bot is, but then it's like, how does this work? How do I put it in the channel? How do I build it? Where are the API going? And so on and so forth. So your bot, once you start, let's say you start coding in C#, and you create your dialogues and you put the intelligent APIs, you basically then start wrapping this bot as a web service. So essentially, it's like a web API. That's what your bot is. And then via the bot connector, which basically routes the messages, you connect this via different channels, and we offer a wide variety of channels for these bots to be able to communicate with different type of users. So of course we have Messenger, we have Slack, Skype, email, but you can also directly connect this to a website, right? So we have this thing called the web chat control actually embeds a web frame with a website that looks like a bot, so that's very easy to do. But it's also something called direct line, which is basically the API call between you and the bot, so you can embed this anywhere. It can be a website, it can be an app. The world is your oyster when it comes to the bot. And it's very, very cool because we had a hack last week with our internal team, and we were able to create a bot that does audio, text, and is doing some very cool speech recognition as well in like a day and a half. And it was ready to be published almost. But there were some like small bugs that need to fix, but it was almost ready to be published, and that's fantastic. You build a bot that's able to intelligently distinguish what the user are saying in a day and a half. How cool is that? Very easy. It's a weekend job, basically. So I do advise all of you to go and try out. It's very, very cool. So the developer portal, as I mentioned before, it looks something like this. It's very, very easy. You go in, you configure your channels, you get some sort of keys, you have an app ID and a password, and then your bot is ready to go. This is supposed to be very, very easy, so you don't have to, again, deal with the pipeline configuration. You don't have to deal with how do I connect this to Skype, how do I connect this to Messenger, what are the protocols that different channels do. You can basically build a bot and add it to all these channels. So it's very, very easy to publish everywhere. And the bot directory, this is sort of a bot marketplace per se, is where we put some of the bots that are built within the Microsoft bot framework. So people that are interested in new cool bots, they can just go there and start adding them to their channels and have a go. There's some really fun ones there, like the Murphy bot is the funnest one, in my opinion. Basically, you go in and say, show me how, what if Bill Gates was like James Bond, and you give your picture with James Bond looking like Bill Gates. So it's very, very cool. I like to do me with like Star Wars character. Again, it's very fun. And it does that because it's using the Bing image search API to like basically get this image. It does a face swap, and it also understands what you're trying to say, what characters you're looking for. So it's very, very cool. And Microsoft Cognitive Services, I think Blažej is going to cover this in a little more detail. But very, very quickly, you have these APIs that are there, and they're really, literally gold. You can go and use them. You have vision, speech, language, knowledge, and search. And I wish these APIs were there like 4 or 5 years ago. So I used to do like a lot of robotics and like build like robots that move around. And I remember we spent days building a vision model, like literally from scratch. We connect, looking in points, doing like very complex algorithms on it. And it would take 10 minutes to process an image as well. Like with this, it's literally taking seconds. So it's very, very easy, and a lot of this are very free, so use them to give intelligence to your apps, basically. And these are the sort of ones we offer. So I think this is all from me. Any questions? No? Okay, I'll be around up until lunchtime, so if you have any questions, please feel free to grab me.
I've got a quick question.
Okay, sure.
Yeah, it's not working again. Hello. No, it is. So if I wanted to take this forward now, so I'm going to go and have a play so I can go and log it. Where are the best resources? So there's only one of you, right? But
yes.
Where should,
so for machine learning in particular, the best resource is something we call the Cortana Intelligence Gallery, where there are a lot of experiments and a lot of problems that people have been trying to solve. So it's the best way to get started, get inspiration in some good data sets. But Cognitive Services is probably the website, which is microsoft.com/cognitive, I believe. And the bot framework, just dev.botframework.com. Any other questions? Yeah?
Licensing model.
Yeah.
Is both everything related? Have you any flash?
So the question was around licensing models about bots and everything else.
Yeah.
So the bot framework is an open source framework. So I don't know which license is going, but it's basically you build it, you take it, you pay for it. It's for the bot framework. The bot framework is free, so you don't have to pay for it. Azure Machine Learning is part of Azure, so you have the experimentation bit, which is free, and then you pay per compute time, and then per API call when your API is in production. So that's part of Azure. And then Cognitive Services, I think some of them you have like 5,000 calls per month that are free. Some of them have 10,000. And then once you pass those, which is quite difficult, you'll then go and start paying for them within Azure.
Can we say that everything is... Can we say that everything is to fill in Azure business model?
Sorry?
Can we say that everything is to fill in the Azure business model?
Yeah, so it's part of the Azure business model, yeah. It's the same type of... If you think about it, a lot of the things you do development-wise with all of these services is pretty much free once you develop it, because it's really hard to use more than 5,000 APIs a month. But everything on top of that, you'll then start paying for. Okay, no more questions? Yeah.
What if I have an existing model that I use scikit-learn and I
Yeah.
want to use Azure?
Yes. So there's a lot of ways you can do that. So scikit-learn is written in Python, and Azure Machine Learning has a module that allows you to bring in Python models already, and you're able to just publish that as a web API, but you can also publish it as a web app if it's already fully contained.
You publish the model or you publish the code?
Well, it depends which route you take. But for Azure Machine Learning, you basically publish the model.
Okay.
So when you do the training, what you basically learn are the parameters of that model, and that's getting published into something like some sort of web API in the background. But that's all taken care of. The only thing you need to do if you use Azure Machine Learning for the model you already built is bring your code in as a zip and put it through data and then publish that as an API, so you don't worry about what's going on in the background. That's not really transparent.
Thank you.
No problem. Any other questions? No? Cool. Thank you.